Home in Indiana Alliance actually started as a demonstration through Indiana Institute on Disability and Community. It was a project that was funded in part through the Governor's Council for People with Disabilities and a small grant that was associated with the University of New Hampshire that was overseeing a statewide initiative on homeownership. During that time in the early 2000s, there was a great investment made in homeownership. In many ways, the mortgage and lending industry had tapped out the typical market, and so it created an opportunity for non-traditional homeowners. And we learned that, it's no surprise, that people with disabilities were the most underserved group in the mortgage and lending industry. So that was the foundation and the reason for the demonstration. We established a steering committee comprised of both federal and state leaders in affordable housing. That means that we had state representation from the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, our state office of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, associations that were affiliated with community development corporations across the state. Within the disability community, there was a strong sense from disability advocates that they were not interested in engaging service providers on the steering committee. The intent of the housing initiative, or the homeownership initiative, was actually not only to build or have brick and mortar, but it was actually control and choice foundation. So our people with disabilities who were serving on the steering committee felt that it was important to have a clear break from the provider community as an effort to really exercise control and in their homeownership efforts. We had disability advocacy organizations such as Self-Advocates of Indiana, the Centers for Independent Living representation, I think those were actually the two primary ones, in addition to the key consumer organization that is based in Indianapolis and serves the state as well. We were very fortunate to have the clear commitment also of Indiana University, through IUPUI and the School of Education. And we were very happy to have Indiana Disability Rights as well. And of course, the Governor's Council has always been a steadfast supporter of the Back Home in Indiana Alliance to varying degrees over the time. What was unique at the time, and I think in some ways is still unique today, is that the housing community and the disability community operated in silos. And so the intent was to establish a partnership across the disability community along with the affordable housing community to create real opportunity for people with disabilities to become homeowners at the time. And that proved to be very, very effective. The Back Home in Indiana Alliance was early on, within the first 3 years of its formation, was recognized by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development as one of 100 best partnerships in the country because of our partnerships and also because of our outcomes, which were assisting people to become first-time home buyers. When we wanted to get the feel for it to see if there would be enough support in Indiana, if it was something that people had on their minds, we offered a training on homeownership and brought in a national leader by the name of Jay Klein to talk about the efforts in New Hampshire and what they hope to accomplish and impact across the country. And I'll just never forget it because we weren't sure if 10 people would show up or more. And we ended up having, in an extremely large conference room at a hotel, was literally standing room only. We had over 300 people, meaning people with disabilities and families who actually attended that first conference. So we knew we were on to something, and that there was clearly a need and an interest. We also invited leaders in the affordable housing community and the advocacy organizations I mentioned earlier, and the disability-related organizations such as the Governor's Council for People with Disabilities, the ARC of Indiana, and other organizations, to see if from each of their perspectives, if there was an actual need, what was happening now and what would they like to see happen or change. One of the key components of the success of the Back Home in Indiana Alliance has been the strong alliances with Centers for Independent Living across the state. We have 6 affordable housing teams, if you will, that are comprised of people with disabilities and older adults in each of 6 communities. Within each of those centers where it's based and there's a strong affiliation has been the heart of the work. So that representatives from each of the teams includes staff, if you will, from the Centers for Independent Living as well as community volunteers. And each of the centers shares a sense of mission in terms of addressing the need for integrated, affordable, and accessible housing for their constituents. It's always very helpful to understand some of the really positive outcomes or the impact that homeownership had and continues to have on people's lives. And so a number of stories come to mind. One of the highlight was one of our partnerships with Habitat for Humanity of Central Indiana. And this was very early on in Habitat's outreach specifically to people with disabilities. And we were able to work with a prospective homeowner to work his way through the Habitat requirements in terms of attending classes, doing the extensive engagement and work that's required. I think they call that work equity within Habitat to kind of earn credits towards the purchase of his home. What was unique about the home is that the prospective homeowner also used a wheelchair so that we all learned together about the accessibility needs. And it was a new challenge for Habitat. And I remember very conscious effort in terms of customizing the home for the homeowner.